Senator from Delaware.
Mr. President, good afternoon. For more than a...
Citizen quorum call.
I'd ask that the quorum call be initiated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, good afternoon. For more than a year now, as you know, because you've been had the good fortune or bad fortune of drawing the short straw and sitting here when I come to the Senate just about every month to highlight the extraordinary work that's being done by the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security, and I'm here to do that again today. The agency has so many talented folks, and they do incredibly important work, and so there's no shortage of material. As you know, Mr. President, the Department of Homeland Security is made up of 22 component agencies and employs over 200,000 people. These men and women work around the clock, and the work they do is designed to protect us all, protect our families, and to protect our country. We were reminded just last month how crucial the work that they do is when terrorists attacked a train station, an airport check-in area in Brussels, Belgium, setting off bombs that killed 32 people and wounded hundreds more. Our thoughts and prayers have been and remain with the victims of these horrible attacks, with their families, with their loved ones who continue to recover and to mourn. Just 6 days before these tragic attacks, I spoke on the floor about the difficult but critical work performed by the 59,000 employees of the Transportation Security Administration, affectionately known as TSA. These men and women work every day. They do so to ensure that all of us, Americans and tourist visitors to our country, may travel around our country, in the airways of our country, and around the world. And when they do so, they are safe from harm. The attack in Brussels shows us once again just how important these efforts, performed day in and day out by the men and women at TSA, are to every single American and to our visitors. It also reminds us just how important it is that TSA has the tools and the resources needed to effectively carry out their mission. To help ensure that TSA is well equipped to protect the public, I worked with a number of our Senate colleagues last week, Democrats and Republicans alike, to include amendments to a bill reauthorizing the Federal Aviation Administration. And our amendments will help make airports and transit hubs across our country safer for travelers by doubling the number of teams. We call them Viper teams, but teams of federal agents and bomb-sniffing dogs who patrol our airports and subways to deter and to identify potential attackers. These teams also make security improvements, and rather these amendments will also make security improvements to public areas and airports and train stations. And they seek to ensure that the men and women patrolling those areas can effectively respond to the type of active shooter incidents who we've unfortunately seen more frequently in recent months. Our common sense amendments are just one of the many ways we can support the men and women at TSA and throughout the Department of Homeland Security who work on the front lines every day, screening passengers, guarding our ports of entry, and patrolling our transit hubs. One part of the support we need to extend to these brave public servants is world-class training and education. By expanding and improving training opportunities for our law enforcement personnel, we can make sure that they have the knowledge, make sure they have the capability to respond to any situation that may arise. That's why one of the best tools in our Homeland Security arsenal is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And I don't like, as my staff knows, I don't like acronyms very much, but this is a pretty good one. It's called the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. It's located down in Glencoe, Georgia, and it goes by an acronym FLETC, and we affectionately call them FLETC. So that's, I'm crazy about acronyms, that's a pretty good one, I think, so we'll call them FLETC. But the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center is tasked with teaching the men and women who deploy to the front lines how to best utilize the technologies and the techniques needed to protect Americans here at home and around the world. They provide training to dozens, literally dozens of federal agencies, state and law enforcement personnel from across our country, and our international partners who travel from all over the world to learn from the best right here in America. From active shooter training to advanced forensic techniques to methods to counter human trafficking, FLETC instructors provide training in nearly 100 courses. They host the training academies for a number of other agencies, including Customs and Border Protection, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the U.S. Coast Guard. Recently, TSA announced that they would be establishing a new permanent academy for transportation security officers at FLETC's main facility in Glencoe, Georgia. Having their training centralized at FLETC will allow TSA to better ensure uniform training for all of their officers and better collaborate with other departments, other components of the Department of Homeland Security. Providing world-class training and instruction to tens of thousands of law enforcement officers each year requires bringing together some of the most highly qualified professional instructors from across our country. The more than 1,000 men and women from law enforcement who serve at FLETC utilize their personal experience in the field to create and to lead effective training that helps the law enforcement professionals keep us, Americans, and our guests safe and secure each day. One of FLETC's world-class instructors is Greg King. Greg King, pictured right here to my left. And for nearly 10 years, Mr. King, Greg King, has been an instructor at FLETC, utilizing his own experience to train federal officers deployed around the world. Before coming to FLETC, Greg served his hometown of Cleveland, Ohio, working for the Cleveland Police Department for 28 years. And if he's listening, I would just suggest that I'm thinking that Greg may have started when he was about 10, but that's an impressive, he looks pretty good for a guy that's been doing this for this long. But Greg has a career spanning nearly 3 decades. He did everything from working undercover as a street crimes unit detective to investigating financial crimes, murders, and crimes against children. And for those 28 years, Greg has dedicated his life to protecting the community of Cleveland and giving back to the town in which he grew up. Today, Greg serves as a senior instructor at FLETC in Glencoe and working as a program coordinator for the Case Organization Presentation Training Program, the Internet Investigations Training Program, and as assistant program coordinator for the Intelligence Analyst Training Program. Greg has a wealth of knowledge in these areas, and his colleagues call him a real, this is a quote, this is their words, not mine, real subject matter expert with the kind of expertise that can only come from real-world experience. Through the lesson plans and course materials that he develops, Greg strives to impart the firsthand knowledge he gained on the force to his students so that when they leave his class, they are able to build effective cases, conduct investigations, analyze information, and ultimately catch the bad guys. At FLETC, Greg's colleagues also refer to him as an Energizer bunny. And Greg, some of my colleagues have referred to me in those same terms. I think it's a compliment. I hope so. In your case, I'm sure that it is. But his energy and his passion for his work inspire other instructors and keep his students engaged. And given his dedication to those students and the FLETC mission, Greg has earned the respect of his peers and FLETC's leadership alike. It's no wonder then that Greg King was named FLETC Instructor of the Year for 2015. Think about that. Instructor of the Year for the entire school. It's clearly a well-deserved honor. And when Greg isn't training law enforcement professionals, he's spending time with his family, his wife, Shelley, their 2 daughters, Layla and Shayla, and their son, Rayshawn. I just want to give a special thanks to Greg's wife, Shelley, to their 2 daughters and their son for sharing him with us, for the people of Cleveland, now the people of the United States, for not just 28 years, but 38 years in all. And he's dedicated countless of hours, I'm told as well, to his community and to his country in addition to that. In his 10 years at FLETC, Greg King has helped train countless law enforcement officers who have used the valuable lessons from his courses every single day to arrest criminals, to protect our fellow citizens, and to help keep Americans safe around the world. Mr. President, Mr. President, FLETC has 4 core values that the agency and their employees attempt to abide by. I'm just going to mention those today. Number 1, respect. Number 2, integrity. One of our former colleagues, Alan Simpson, senator from Wyoming, used to say about integrity, if you have it, nothing else matters. If you don't have it, nothing else matters. And then integrity is the second value that I want to mention for FLETC. So respect, integrity, service, and excellence. I like to say one of the things we need to focus on is focusing on excellence in everything we do as a country, here in the Senate and across the country. If it isn't perfect, make it better. And that's one of the core values for FLETC. Respect, integrity, service, and excellence. And I mentioned that those values actually look a little bit like some of the values that we embrace in the office from the state that I'm privileged to represent. Greg has lived this one using his own experience to make the generation of the generation of law enforcement officers in our country even better prepared to face the threats of tomorrow. Greg is just one shining example of the critical work being done by more than 1,000 instructors at FLETC. And these instructors make it their mission to ensure that law enforcement personnel across our country are well prepared for whatever they might face on the job. So to Greg, to all the men and women at FLETC, to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, we want to thank you for your hard work day in and day out. We want to thank you for your service to the people of our country and urge you to keep up the good work. I want to close, before I do, taking a drink of water. Thank you. Some of us travel on trains, some of us travel on buses, some of us travel on airplanes and helicopters and in our own cars, trucks, and vans. I do a combination of those, but I do a fair amount of travel in the air. I used to be a naval flight officer for many years, retired Navy captain, spent a lot of time in Navy airplanes. Love the Navy, love serving in the Navy. But now they don't let me, they let me ride in a commercial plane. Sometimes I get to fly in military planes too, which is a kick. And, when you fly in commercial aviation, you're at an airport, you generally go through the check-in, and security check-in, and they want to make sure that you're not carrying anything in your luggage or on your person that's inappropriate or illegal. And you have to be confronted by usually a series of TSA officers. I just want to remind us all, they're there to protect us. That's their job, to make sure that the planes that we get on, whether they're going 200, 300, 400 miles or 2,000 or 3,000 miles, to go from one side of our country to the other side or one side of the world to another, the jobs of the TSA officers is to protect us. They have a very tough job. And there's actually a tension but in the job that exists with the work that they do. On the one hand, you have every day tens of thousands of travelers, maybe hundreds of thousands of travelers, pulsing through our airports, trying to get from a terminal, from a gate, onto a plane in time to catch their flights. They've had to, in some cases, recheck their bags. They've had to go through, unloading their suitcases and showing that what they have in their suitcases is not inappropriate or illegal. There's a rush to get through to try to catch their flights. And TSA is there. In some cases, they slow that traffic, that flow down. And they slow that flow of traffic down in order to make sure that what all those passengers every day are carrying in their suitcases, their briefcases, their purses, or on their body, that is not inappropriate and it's not illegal. And they do it to protect all of us. Sometimes they get a little bit, TSA folks get a little bit frazzled. I would say we would too, if we had to do the work that they do. I've taken on myself a lot of flights, a lot of times I'm flying commercial. When I go through the check-in, just to say, after they check my ID or whatever, to say to the TSA officers, tell them who I am, I'm a senior Democrat on the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. And I just thank them. I just thank them for what they do. And say we value your work and appreciate it. Just want you to know that. I can't tell you how many times the officers with TSA have said to me, nobody has ever thanked me before. Nobody has ever thanked me before. Sometimes we can't pay people enough for the work that they do, and they work hard for our money. But I would ask others of us, when you see somebody, especially a TSA officer who's goes out of their way, who actually, in spite of all the hustle and bustle and pressure on them, they manage to still be polite, courteous, helpful. Thank them. Thank them. And it might be the first, you may become the first person who's ever said thank you to them. And at the end of the day, one of the things that means a lot to me was whenever people thank me for my service to our country, whether it's in uniform or as governor, senator, or here today. I'd urge you to do that. When I do that, it makes me feel better. And you know what? It makes them feel better, too. And now with Mr. President, I think I'm looking around the Senate chamber here, I'm looking for Democrats and Republicans that are rushing to get to their podiums to say something. I don't see anybody rushing. And with that in mind, I will note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk should call the roll.